Hi. One of the things that I realized that the world needs more than anything else is we live in a broken world and the world needs a lot of healing. There are so many people in the world who have had to suppress secrets, suppress their voice and live in silence, suppress stigma of speaking up about the things that are bothering them, the things that are hurting them. I remember a time when I was working at corporate America and I was going through some challenges. I was beginning to feel discontent. Work was becoming a lot. And I remember going to my then supervisor and saying, I think I need to take some time away. And I remember him saying, well, what is it that you need? And I said, I have been back and forth to the hospital, but still trying to work. Now, at that particular time, there was an important meeting going on in another office, in the New York office, as a matter of fact. And I remember telling my boss I wanted to take some time to be able to be with my family and also to prioritize my own mental well-being. And I'll never forget that moment. My boss looked me squarely in the eye and he said, but you're still going to go to the meeting, right? He never asked me, was I okay? Never asked, was my family member okay? And I remember at that time thinking that the world needs to understand what it means to prioritize mental health and mental well-being so that we can live in a more empathetic and compassionate type of world. One of the toughest challenges that I had to face in my life was after the loss of my parents. I was thrust into a world where I had decided I was going to raise 3 of my siblings. Now, I had people standing around me telling me not to do it. They were saying, Rhonda, you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Go finish school. You might want to get married and have children of your own. But I cannot begin to tell you that you would have had to have ice water running through your veins for you to just stand there and see your siblings, your loving siblings, who were in disarray, having to have gone through some grief. We all had that commonality. And so it made sense at that moment for me to be able to say, you know what, I am going to step up into this plate. I am going to step into this role, knowing full well that I was pretty much a child myself, 18 years old, becoming a parent figure to not 1, not 2, but 3 siblings, ages 4, 14, and my oldest deaf sister, who was 20 at the time. Now, one of the things that taught me more than anything was I have an incredible spirit of resilience. I have willpower and I have determination. There was nothing that was going to hold me back. I had those things inside of me and I said I was going to use them to the full of my best ability. One of the lessons that I learned in my life is that adversity are the seeds to our greatness. Now, I have obviously been through some things. I've lost both of my parents. I was raising 3 children who were not my own, 3 of my siblings. And I had been told by my then supervisor that basically work was more important than my mental well-being. And so I remember a time in my life where I said, you know, I am going to take some time and go clear my mind. I decided to take a trip out of the country. And during that trip, I experienced some lows in my life. The trip wasn't going as I expected. It was around the holidays. It was it was around Christmas time. And it was when, you see all the lights, you see the Christmas trees, you see the snow, you see people shopping, you see all this joy, and you hear Christmas music and things of that nature, and yet my spirit would not allow me to experience that joy. In my heart, I began to feel discontentment. I felt periods of lowness, depression, seasonal depression, and even anxiety. And I decided I was going to go see my then therapist. Now, after sitting on his couch and letting him know what I was experiencing, he began to tell me that adversities are important and that they're necessary. They produce the seeds that we need to nurture. And out of that nourishment, we are able to experience perseverance. That's where we get our strength, our inner strength, our confidence, the ability to be resilient, the ability to be tenacious, and the ability to be able to impact and inspire those around us. Now, when I was going through what I was going through, I didn't realize that it was affecting other areas of my life. My friends began to notice. My family began to notice. And so I had to make sure that I reached full down inside of me to be able to pull myself up and to be able to climb to that other side, not only for myself, but for those around me, so that not only I can feel empowered, but they can feel empowered as well. It reminds me of a quote that I once heard one time. The Lord He only gives his greatest battles to his strongest warriors. So it was in that moment, my greatest lesson was, Rhonda, you are resilient, and you are one of God's greatest warriors. If I could sit down on the couch and have a conversation with my younger self, maybe my 21-year-old self, because at that age, she's an adult, she's making some decisions. If I could sit down with her and go back in time, one of the things that I would say is, Rhonda, make sure you trust the process. I think it's so easy for us to feel like we want to be in control. We want to navigate our own desirable outcomes. We want to be able to say how things should be. I remember a time in my life when I was contemplating going to a new job. I said, man, I want this position so bad. I prayed, I got my resume together, I got my references together, I did all the right things. And I said, if at any point anything doesn't go through, it must not be meant to be. So I began to go through the interview process. I go to the new job, I meet the chief administrative officer. That interview went well. I met some of the partners. Those meetings went well. I began to meet some of the staff, and I said, wow, this is going great. And then I remember it was to the point where I had to provide some writing samples. So I said, okay, let me provide the writing samples. Those went well. I was like, okay, anything else you guys need? So I'm going along in this process. Everything is going good. So I said, this must be meant to be. I actually felt happy about the fact that I was about to step in my dream role. Now, shortly after getting in that dream role, I realized I had to keep up with the pace of the firm and the culture. So I'm there, I'm working my best, climbing that corporate ladder. I'm going in early, working through lunch, staying late, and yet I still fell behind. I remember that the work felt so overwhelming. And it was at that point I was like, I am not sure this was for me. But what I didn't realize was I needed to continue to trust the process. There was a lot of good that came out of that. Because of those issues that I had done there, when I took my leave from that role, I was able to step into my purpose. My purpose was helping other people who were burnt out, stressed out, and overwhelmed to be able to prioritize their mental health and step into their greatness. Another thing that I would tell my 21-year-old self is, Rhonda, choose progress over perfection. A lot of people think we need to check the check boxes, that success or progress means that we have to have the right job, the right spouse, the right amount of money, the right level of education. But at the end of the day, it's about not feeling like you have to be perfect, but that you have to live up to the potential in which you function at your best. One thing I realize is that a lot of people are really hurting. Even people who show up and they may have their head held high, they may have a big smile on their face, but beneath the surface, there's probably a lot of hurt and brokenness there. You know, growing up, I had a really good close friend named Denise. Denise and I were really close. We were besties. We told each other everything, and we knew each other's secrets. I knew that Denise was in a troublesome relationship with her mother as well as her father. And Denise was also having relationships with other people. And so what happened is I met up with Denise again years later, and I realized she was married, she had children, but she was still having those same issues that she had from childhood in toxic relationships that are affecting other areas of her life. So one of the things that I have done, I have made it my mission to help people with their transformation so that they become happy and healthy and whole, mentally and professionally and emotionally, because healing is so important. One of the things that I do is when people come to me, I help to empower them and inspire them, help them to see their greatness, their purpose, and their potential. I invite people to my platform. One of my platforms is the Dr. Rhonda Show Presents, where we invite different leaders, change agents, and people who themselves just have inspiring stories of how they became who they are. We amplify voices, voices that have been suppressed, people who have stood behind those secrets, stood behind the shame, stood behind the stigma of not being open. Those people who have held their head up high all of their lives to be able to show a certain face to the world. A lot of people don't realize mental health has many different faces. And it's important for us to show up as our authentic and real selves. And so on the Dr. Rhonda Show, on the WBGR TV network, we invite people, come on the show, step behind the lens, tell your story from an authentic and genuine perspective. Let people know who you are, what you've gone through, and what you've overcome. Because when we do that, you never know who might be inspired by your story, who might lean in and need your help. I've heard the saying most of my adult life about you never know how what you're going through, what you've overcome, once you're on the other side, it's so important to reach back and help those following behind you. And so we love to be able to help people to get through the transformation so that they can become the best person, not only that they can be, but that they were created to be. And I realized there's so many people out there who really need to have a lighter heart, need to be able to release the burdens that they've been holding on to most of their lives. They need to be able to let go of all that guilt, let go of the shame, let go of all that baggage and luggage, all the things that they've been through. I remember one day sitting in my therapist's office, having a conversation with him, and he said, "Rhonda, people like you typically aren't that successful. People who have been through a lot, many of them turn to negative coping skills. They look for ways, such as maybe bad relationships. They might turn to drugs. They might turn to smoking or drinking in excess, right?" And so he said, "But I think people would be inspired by your story. I think you should begin telling your story." Shortly after that, I get a call from the then executive director of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And she said, hey, we're having an open forum. We're going to invite the community, we're going to invite elected officials, and we would like for you to share what it's been like dealing with mental health issues and then deciding to prioritize your mental health. Now, after I got that call, the first thing I thought is, wait a minute, you want me to speak about this in front of people? Now, up until that point, I had only told my therapist behind closed doors, nothing out in person. Haven't been out in front of people sharing my story, but I decided to do it. So I stepped on that stage, teeth chattering, knees knocking, and I told the story of what I had gone through. Told the story of living with the depression and the anxiety, post-traumatic stress, childhood trauma, all of the things that I had experienced. And my goal was, Rhonda, get up there, tell the story, and then make a beeline for the door. As I was walking towards the door, I had a woman come up to me and say, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's really helped me in my relationship with my daughter. I had a police officer come up to me and say that he wanted me to help talk to his cadets. And I had a magazine editor come up to me and say she wanted to feature me and my family in her next edition of her magazine, which was a mental health publication. It was at that moment that I realized that the transparency of me sharing my story was very impactful to other people. That was also one of the reasons why I wanted to have a platform where I could help people, support them in doing the same. So again, on the Dr. Rhonda Show Presents, I invite people to my platform. People who are entrepreneurs, people who are storytellers, coaches, authors, and the like, for them to be able to get more exposure, get their story out to the world so they can help heal hearts, one story at a time. Man, the making of an entrepreneur has been a phenomenal experience. From the moment I walked in the door, I got my team who helped me with my wardrobe, made sure that I looked presentable on camera, played some mood music to get me in the mood, took some amazing photos. They have some state-of-the-art equipment, and they took their time to make sure that they worked with me at my own pace. If you haven't had a chance to experience the making of an entrepreneur, the DocuSeries, I suggest you make this the last day that you make excuses about why you can't be involved. This is an amazing experience with an amazing team that will produce an amazing outcome.